The morning begins with the smell of hot coffee. Steam rises slowly, waking up the kitchen, waking up a person who is still half asleep. Everyone knows that moment, a single sip to start the day. But right after that familiar comfort, almost no one stops to think further. Where does the rest of the coffee go? The grounds left behind in the filter, in the machine, in the cafe. They quietly fall into the trash, moving in rhythm with our hurried lives. Something that once gave us energy becomes something we forget without a second thought. And the question is, does the journey of coffee really end there? Every day, millions of cups of coffee are finished in just a few short minutes. We hold them on the way to work, while waiting for the train, or during rushed conversations before a meeting. The cup becomes empty, the lid is removed, and everything quickly disappears into a trash bin. But coffee waste is more than just disposable cups. Inside every cafe, every office, every kitchen, coffee grounds continue to pile up after each brew. They quietly accumulate, damp and heavy, unnoticed by most people. The person making the coffee simply clears them away to prepare for the next customer. The drinker has already stepped back into the street, recharged. In this modern rhythm of life, coffee waste is created every day, steady and repetitive, forming an invisible stream. A stream of waste tied to habit, to coffee culture, and to the way people begin their mornings. And rarely do we stop to ask where all of it actually goes. In Berlin, there is a small cafe where the smell of coffee constantly fills the air, and where a design student often sits for hours with a notebook and a pencil. Julian drinks a lot of coffee, just like many young people in the city. But unlike most, he begins to question what happens after every brew. The coffee grounds are knocked out of the portafilter and fall into a bin, day after day. One afternoon, in between the sound of the grinder and familiar conversations, Julian pauses. He wonders why something that was just used, that just created value, is immediately treated as worthless. For a design student, this is not only a question about waste, but a question about overlooked potential. In Berlin's coffee culture, where people value small details, that thought starts to grow. From an ordinary cafe, a quiet idea begins to form, that perhaps coffee grounds were never truly the end of the story. Every morning, as the city slowly wakes up, bicycles quietly begin to roll through familiar streets. The couriers are not delivering food or packages, but carrying containers filled with coffee grounds that are still warm with steam. They stop at small cafes, greet baristas with familiar nods, receive heavy bins scented with coffee, and secure them carefully to the back of their bikes. This work is quiet, without signs or attention, often unnoticed. Yet with every turn of the wheel, cafes scattered across the city are being connected into a single flow. Amid busy roads and the fast pace of urban life, there are people doing something different. They collect what is left behind after each cup of coffee, pedaling patiently through sun and rain, carrying an invisible part of the city's coffee culture. This is not just transportation. It is the first step in helping coffee grounds leave the trash and begin a new journey. When the containers of coffee grounds arrive at the workshop, the atmosphere immediately changes. The familiar sounds of cafes are replaced by focus and steady work. Workers put on gloves, open each damp container, and inspect the grounds by sight and by touch. Coffee grounds are never the same. Some are fine, some coarse, some mixed with impurities. Everything must be carefully sorted. On long metal tables, the grounds are spread out, separated, and cleaned bit by bit. It is repetitive work, not glamorous, but it requires patience and responsibility. Every small movement affects the quality of what comes next. In this moment, the coffee grounds are not yet a material, but they are no longer waste. They sit at the edge of transformation, where human hands prepare them for a process about to begin.
After being cleaned, the coffee grounds enter the most important stage, where waste truly begins to become a material. Inside the drying room, warm air circulates evenly as the grounds are spread thin, allowing moisture to slowly disappear. Workers check them by hand, feeling the texture, knowing that even a trace of remaining moisture could ruin the next step. Once the grounds reach a stable state, they are moved to the mixing area. Here, plant fibers, fine wood particles, and natural binders are added in precise proportions. The mixer turns steadily, powerful yet controlled. Inside, the coffee grounds are no longer separate fragments. They begin to merge, forming a new structure. When the blend is complete, small material pellets start to appear, falling gently and consistently. It is a moment that makes people pause, because in front of them, something once discarded is taking the shape of a different future. This is not magic. It is the result of understanding materials, thoughtful design, and human hands trusting the process.
When the material pellets are ready, the entire production line seems to slow down for a decisive moment. A worker pours the mixture into the mold, carefully aligning every detail, because at this stage, there is no room for mistakes. The mold is placed into the press, metal meets metal, and heat and pressure begin to rise. No one speaks. All eyes follow the movement of the machine. Once the press closes, the outcome is almost decided. There is no way back, no chance for adjustment. Inside the mold, the material endures intense pressure, its components bonding tightly, shifting from loose fragments into a solid form. Then the press slowly opens, warm air escapes, and the first product is revealed. A cup takes shape, its surface still warm, carrying the marks of pressure and time. This is the visual climax of the process, the moment when waste officially becomes something valuable, and the quiet work of human hands finally takes on a visible form.
At this moment, emotion steps aside to make room for clear facts. On a metal scale, coffee grounds are measured precisely, portion by portion, neither more nor less. About 6 cups of coffee grounds, once pushed aside after hurried mornings, are enough to create a complete espresso cup. When a worker places the grounds beside the finished product, the connection becomes easy to understand and convincing. That cup contains nearly 40% coffee grounds, not to tell a beautiful story, but as a real, verifiable number. These concrete details are what build trust, not promises, but weight, proportion, and the feeling of holding it in your hands. When people see waste being measured, transformed, and turned into a familiar object, they understand that this is not just an idea, but a solution that exists in everyday life. Inside the cafe, the barista gently places the cup beneath the machine, locking in the portafilter with a motion shaped by routine. Espresso flows slowly, rich and dark, filling the air with warmth and aroma. The cup in their hands is more than a simple object. It is the meeting point of many people across this journey. When the coffee is handed to a customer, the moment passes quickly, yet it carries a quiet sense of familiarity. The drinker takes a sip, pauses for a second, feeling the warmth spread through their hands and the subtle bitterness settle in. They are not thinking about factories, press machines, or bags of coffee grounds measured earlier, and yet, it is in this ordinary moment that real value appears. A product created to return to daily life, to serve human habits, to blend naturally into coffee culture, into conversations, into brief moments where time slows down in a busy day. This is where the journey of coffee grounds leaves the factory and becomes part of real life.
This journey does not end with a single coffee cup. When people begin to see coffee grounds as a material, new possibilities slowly open up. Ideas for everyday products, lifestyle objects, and even furniture start to take shape from something once considered waste. A table, a chair, a small object in a living space can all carry the story of a morning routine,
Harnessing the
of
fine
habits,
grain of compressed
conscious
coffee.
choices. What matters most is not how many products coffee grounds can become, but how our perspective changes. When waste turns into a resource, when design is connected to responsibility, the life cycle of materials becomes longer and more meaningful. Tomorrow, you will still drink your coffee as usual, but perhaps when you set the cup down, you will think a little more about what is left behind. And if something as familiar as coffee grounds can move toward the future, then many other things around us may simply be waiting to be seen differently.